This video was created thanks to the support of patron Luke Hatter. I really appreciate the support from you and everyone else on Patreon. So thank you guys. Not every Splatoon weapon is out yet, but that doesn't mean we can't count down the 10 best weapons so far. Now keep in mind that while this list is based on my opinion, I will be basing it off of stats and how helpful it is for yourself individually as well as for the team. And without further ado, let's go.
Number 10.
I'm not one to normally use these kinds of weapons, but the blaster really packs a good blast. If you want to splat someone that sucks at moving or is stuck in their opponent's ink, this is exactly what you want in your hands. The impact of each blast is insane. You'll take out anyone with either 1 or 2 good hits. And on top of that, shooting a bit higher into the air leaves a nice thick spread of ink in front of you, which is great for quick movement and covering a lot of turf. This may not be the best gun for something like Turf Wars, but take this into any of the ranked modes and you'll be rocking it out. The blaster also has the Toxic Mist sub, which complements this weapon well. The Toxic Mist will slow down any player that gets inside that mist, which is when the blaster is most effective. The special is also a splashdown, where your inkling will jump into the air and splash down to the ground, creating a circle of ink around them. The splashdown is my favorite special in the game just because of how satisfying it can be, and again, it works great with the blaster. If you're in a tough situation with someone with higher fire rate, the splashdown can be a great backup. While getting kills with this is a lot of fun, it's also pretty challenging. That's not to say that challenge is bad, but a majority of players will be able to avoid the blaster shots unless it's really situational. Regardless, I still have a blast with this weapon. And that's the last time I'll ever use the word blast as a pun. I apologize.
Number 9.
Splashy, splashy, splash. That's how this whole game goes. There's so much splashing that there's even a weapon called the Omatic. This is an automatic shooter with an insane amount of firepower. Not only that, but the shots are extremely accurate. There's a lot of automatics that can shoot fast, but the shots are usually spread out and all over the place. This one aims all in one straight direction. This is one of those guns you want to have in a close range fight. Despite the damage being low, the insanely fast fire rate makes up for that. The sub it comes with is the Toxic Mist, just like the blaster had. It works really well with this weapon because, again, having great accuracy is the key to success here. The special is the Inkjet, which I like to just call the Flood Pack because that's all I can think of whenever I'm using this, and it's a great special, but it does have a lot of glaring issues. The Inkjet is great for clearing out huge chunks of your opponent's ink, and it's useful for getting kills when there's a dog pile of inklings. However, you're basically a giant target, so you have to be really careful when you use the Inkjet or you'll get sniped out of the air. While I do love this weapon, my only real gripe is the range of your shots. The ink doesn't cover very much distance, putting you at a huge disadvantage whenever you're forced to hit someone that's far away. But I still love that name, man. Splashomatic. It sounds so 80s.
Number 8.
Tell me if you've ever had this thought. Man, I could really go with a weapon that's an umbrella and a shotgun. That'd be so cool. And don't you lie to me and say you had that idea before the Splatbrella came into existence. I see it down there in the comments. But really though, a shotgun crossed with an umbrella is the most genuinely creative gun I've ever heard of in several years. Normal shots are like a shotgun. You'll shoot a small but powerful gush of ink in front of you. When you continue to hold the fire button, an umbrella pops up serving as a shield. Keep holding that button and the umbrella releases itself and moves forward, leaving a trail of its own ink. Since this weapon is still so new, not a lot of people know how to use it well, including myself, but damn if this thing isn't a joy to use. Whipping out the umbrella shield before someone splats you is so satisfying, and the regular shots are a lot stronger than they look too. Even the range of the shots is decent. There are a couple drawbacks, one of those being that the shield only protects you from one side, so people can still splat you from behind. And the sub is just the sprinkler. As the title implies, the sprinkler sprays a small amount of ink around itself. Granted, it can be a useful sub-weapon, but it doesn't really assist you individually. It is great for something like splat zones and tower control because it helps keep your team up on the top, but it's still just eh. The special is the Ink Storm, which allows you to summon an entire rainstorm of ink for a temporary amount of time. If there's any reason to try Splatoon 2 if you haven't already, it's to use this extremely creative weapon. You won't find anything else like it.
Number 7.
You want to know what total destruction is? A mini Splatling, ladies and gentlemen. A mini Splatling. Out of all the variations of this weapon, I've always preferred this one. What's unique about the mini Splatling is that you have to charge up before shooting ink. The mini Splatling has the fastest charge out of all the Splatlings, allowing you to deal doom at insane speeds. On top of the fast charge and extreme power, the range is pretty good too. You can hit someone from a far distance. The sub you get with the mini Splatling is the burst bombs, which are alright. I've always used burst bombs as more of a distraction, but they're useful if you need to stun someone before nailing them with ink. The special you get is the Tenta missiles. Now this special is kind of like the ink strike from the first Splatoon, but here you aim at specific players. Once you get them in range, you'll launch the missiles and they'll come flying down. Sadly, the Tenta missiles are pretty easy to avoid. They're really only useful to help track down where someone is, or if someone's like trapped and vulnerable. And another thing about the mini Splatling is that it's mostly pink too, which might make it seem tame and calm. Oh, but that ain't the truth, man.
Number 6.
When Splatoon 2 was first announced, Nintendo showed off one new type of weapon, the Splat Dooleys. These things are a beast. I mean, just look at how cool they look. Running around with them it feels great. There's a few types of Splat Dooleys you can use, but my personal favorite are the end parry Splat Dooleys. With two weapons at hand, your firepower is pretty nuts. It's not quite as fast as the mini Splatling, but you also don't have to charge your shots, which is a big advantage. This is one of those weapons that are more speed and even technical based, seeing as you can quickly dash around the stage with ease. To improve matters, the range is pretty decent too. The sub you're equipped with is the Curling Bomb. This is one of the new subs and now one of the most frequently used ones too. Simply throwing this bomb causes it to bounce across the stage, eventually exploding. You can time when it explodes based off of how long you hold the bomb, allowing you to strategize when it's best to throw. The special is the Inkjet, which is one we've already talked about. Really, the only problem with the Splat Dooleys is the amount of damage you output. While you do shoot quickly, the shots really aren't that powerful. This forces you to be really good at rolling around since you'll likely need to do that to get a lot of splats in. But man, I just adore these things. I love dueled weapons. Like at this point, I just want dually arrow sprays. Like what are those coming, Nintendo?
Number 5.
Oh yes, the legendary, the glorious, the almighty .96 Gal. This weapon is so much better than it looks. Well, I mean, it does look really cool aesthetically, but that's besides the point. The .96 Gal is most useful for long-range attacks. This thing can cover some serious range. It's almost like sniping. And on top of that, all the shots are really powerful. It only takes about 2 to 3 hits and you'll get that satisfying splat. This is a lot like the blaster, except way better and more fun to use. But also like the blaster, your shot output is pretty slow. But it's not like that slow, which makes the .96 Gal an awesome weapon. Even with a slowish fire rate, you can still do a lot of damage. The biggest downside to me has to be the sub, as it is simply the sprinkler. Again, the sprinkler has its uses, but it's just not that beneficial. However, the special is fantastic as it's the ink armor. Ink armor is a lot like the bubbler from the first Splatoon, but now everyone on your team will get shielded with this. Instead of a bubble as a shield though, your character kind of glows and you'll be allowed to take a little extra damage. However, the armor only lasts temporarily, so you can't just fiddle around with it the whole game. The .96 Gal and ink armor really complement each other because the slow fire rate can make it a tad tricky to get splats in, but just the sheer range your ink goes in is just nuts. Even if these aren't your kind of weapons, you gotta try this variation at the very least.
Number 4.
I feel really weird putting the Splatshot Jr on this top 10, but I honestly love this thing. In case you couldn't tell, I'm a big fan of the automatics. But anyway, the Splatshot Jr is well known for its incredibly fast fire rate. Like most weapons with a fast fire rate, the damage output is a bit low, but the sheer speed makes up for it. Another thing that's awesome about the Splatshot Jr is that the sub and special are both really useful in a lot of different scenarios. The sub is the Splat Bomb, which is great for taking out small chunks of opponent's ink, as well as helping you clear out the zones in splat zones. And your special is also the ink armor. All in all, the Splatshot Jr is just really great to use. Your mobility is pretty quick, and most people don't expect anyone to use this weapon anyway, seeing as it's not the most common choice.
Number 3.
I swear this wasn't done on purpose, but at number 3 we have the Trislosher. Do you get the joke? Like really, this wasn't intentional, it just kind of happened. Anyway, the Trislosher is what I like to call the green bucket of fury. What helps this particular slosher stand out from the others is its fast output and range of ink. When you throw out ink, it spreads all over the place, allowing you to get splats in even if your throw wasn't perfectly accurate. While the range of the throws aren't the farthest, I find the sheer width of the ink to be more useful and just better overall. This slosher handles really well too. The fast throws allow you to move around at a quick pace. Plus the sub and special weapons are really great. The sub is the burst bomb and the special is the ink armor. I already feel pretty invincible when I use the Trislosher, so throwing out an ink armor on top of that is basically turning into Superman with a bucket. Superman with a bucket, imagine that.
Number 2.
If you've seen my older top 10s on the first Splatoon game, you might have expected one of the Aerosprays to crack this list. I know the more pro players claim that the Aerospray RG is kinda crappy and all, but I couldn't disagree more. Well, the pros said that about the Aerospray in the first game. I'm not really sure on their thoughts for the second game, but anyway, like the first game, your fire rate for the Aerospray is just ridiculous. It's comparable to a Splatling, and that's pretty mind-blowing when you think about it. And the special is just so much fun to use. At first, I didn't know how to feel about the baller, but it's quickly become one of my favorite specials. With the baller, you roll in a ball spewing ink behind you. At any point in time, you can hold a button to fill your ball with ink and it'll explode, or the ball will explode on its own after a certain amount of time. You can even run up walls in this ball. I don't know why, but I like using the baller so much. I guess it kind of reminds me of Super Monkey Ball. I don't know. Now, the one thing that really holds the Aerospray back from being number 1 for me is its sub, which is again the Sprinkler. You were almost perfect. Oh, it was so close. But if you want a ton of points in this game, the Aerospray RG is the best way to get them. But what is number 1, you might be asking? Let's find out. And now, my number 1 favorite Splatoon weapon is... Oh boy, I might get flack for this one. Yes, my number 1 Splatoon weapon is the Splatter Shot. I know how vanilla and bland that sounds, but I just love this freaking thing. The range of your shots is great, the fire rate is great, and the damage you output is also great. Like, all the stats are solid. There's no drawbacks at all. That makes the Splatter Shot feel the most balanced out of all the weapons in Splatoon 2. And I also love both the sub and specials. The sub is the burst bomb, while the special is a splashdown. Everything here just works in harmony. Now sure, my arsenal has nothing that's too powerful, but that doesn't matter because every other weapon has some sort of drawback that the Splatter Shot can take advantage of. Now, obviously, every weapon can take advantage of one another, but I've had the most success with this one. The Splatter Shot is like that dad that works really hard for his family. He puts in lots of hours at work and somehow finds time for his kids and wife too. And you know, sometimes that dad has bad days and comes home from work really grumpy and all that, but for the most part, this dude's living the dream. That's basically the Splatter Shot in a nutshell. So if you enjoyed this top 10 and want to see the next one early, consider becoming a patron for just $1 a month. Like and subscribe if you enjoyed this, and let me know in the comments what your favorite Splatoon weapon is and why. Thanks so much for watching, and I hope you have a great day.